As part of their 2015 election platform, the federal Liberals promised to develop a national housing strategy. Earlier this year, they checked in with key stakeholders about what Canadians want to see from such a strategy. And joining us now for more on those consultations and how they might shape the future of housing in Canada, in the nation's capital, we're joined by Jean-Yves Duclos. He is the Minister of Families, Children and Social Development and the Liberal MP for the riding of Quebec. Bienvenue, monsieur. Nice to have you on our program this evening. How are you?
Hello, Steve. Very nice to talk to you.
Tell us, for starters, what you heard during your consultations.
Well, let me first say that we've been privileged to receive such an input both in quantity and quality, tremendous from our families and communities. We've had thousands of people answering through social media, through direct interactions with us in the last 4 or 5 months. So we've compiled a great report, which is called the What We Heard report. So it's full of great ideas, some critical input, and ways to build better housing for all families in the future.
What do you think the key issues are that a national housing strategy would tackle?
So what we're being told that we need to agree on a common objective. Basically, the common objective is to make sure that all Canadians have access to decent housing that is affordable. The second objective is to make sure that this brings better and stronger communities that are more inclusive, more oriented towards the people, the needs of our families. So that's a key common objective which has been signaled to us. And then a set of ways and challenges and opportunities that Canadians want us to engage with our other partners.
I guess the difficulty, Minister, is trying to figure out a national strategy when you have markets that are red hot like Toronto and Vancouver, and then you've got everything else which isn't nearly like that. How do you have a one-size-fits-all national strategy in such a disparate country?
We indeed have a number of housing circumstances that vary across our families, going from the extreme of homelessness, going through transitional housing, social housing, which is a key issue in our consultation with citizens, and going through the home ownership, which is very difficult in many communities, as you just said. And we also understand, as you said, that responding to these challenges requires flexibility and adjustment to the fact that some of these circumstances are more of greater concern in some communities than in others. So an ability to be flexible, an ability to understand that these conditions vary across regions and across families.
Do you think it's actually possible to do this?
Yes, it is possible, as long as the federal government is having a respectful and listening and collaborative relationship with provinces and territories, with municipalities, and equally important, with the tremendous wealth of human resources, ideas, of energy that I have been fortunate to observe in our communities over the last 5 months.
Well, this is one of the other obviously interesting things about being a Canadian politician, is that no one is singularly responsible for any particular issue, but the provinces are basically in control of the housing file according to our Constitution. So what do they want from you other than give us money so we can do what we want?
So what Canadians have told us over the last 5 months is they want a renewed federal leadership in assisting the housing needs of our middle class and lower income families. That's a clear signal that we've received. So they want the federal government to be more supportive in a more open, transparent and accountable manner with provinces and territories. They also want a more inclusive relationship with municipalities and community leaders and Indigenous organizations. So they want the federal government to do more and they want the federal government to do things differently.
But who decides?
Well, it's an inclusive, respectful partnership with provinces and territories. I'm fortunate to have had 2 federal, provincial, territorial meetings in the last few months. And in both cases, we had great relationship, great discussions with provinces and territories. We all realize that it's in working together that we'll be able to make the most effective and the most inclusive use of our limited resources.
No, I appreciate that, but the fact that you're a Liberal and the Ontario Housing Minister is also a Liberal doesn't mean you're going to agree on everything. And when he says, here's what I want, and I want you to give us this much money to help pay for it, what is your response?
Well, the response is dual, the two responses. First, we have a joint responsibility to assist our citizens. So we are all working for the same objectives of making the housing conditions of our families better and many other conditions that are related to housing. And second, we want to do it in a more transparent and accountable manner, both in the short term, because our communities and our citizens are the same. So all communities and all families, all citizens want an open and honest reaction of all governments, both in the short term and in the longer term.
Okay, when I hear those words transparency and accountability, though, that means, at least to my ear, when we send you, Province of Ontario, money, here are the things you have to do in order to be eligible to get it. Am I reading that correctly?
No, let me be very clear. We have the fortune of having primary partners in the shape of provinces and territories. Many of our more useful and effective actions are in collaboration, in full inclusion and consultation with provinces and territories. This being said, the federal government has had since the end of Second World War a key role to play in the housing conditions of our families through CMHC, the Canadian Mortgage Housing Corporation, through the fact that the federal government created or helped to create many cooperatives and non-profit housing providers, particularly in Ontario, which have been able to be very effective in assisting the housing needs of Canadians. So yes, provinces and territories have the responsibility, but so does the federal government.
Sure. Minister, let me get your thinking on this. I think Canadians believe that education is a fundamental right in this country, and healthcare too. We've sort of decided that over the last 149 and a half years. Do you feel that housing is a similar basic human right that all Canadians are entitled to?
I think it's clear that the housing conditions of all Canadians are important, in particular those that live in the most deprived conditions of all, which is homelessness. So we have a moral and human right to obligation to respond to those very dire and severe circumstances. So to work towards a progressive implementation of a housing right is something that we've heard from stakeholders and Canadian families, and I'm looking forward to engage on that basis with my colleagues, provinces and territories.
Okay, but I didn't hear a yes there. I heard you say you've heard that from your stakeholders, but you have not yet said whether you agree that housing is a fundamental basic human right in the same way health and education are. Do you think that?
That's exactly what we've heard. We've heard that this was a moral and human obligation for the government to act upon. And as I said, this is the input that we've received very clearly. And I look forward to share that input with my colleagues from provinces and territories, because on that particular matter, as well as on all matters related to housing, we have the fortune, but as well as the obligation to work together, provinces, territories, and the federal government.
Minister, I'm not meaning to be rude here, but I'm going to try this a third time because I still haven't heard you say yes or no. You have heard from stakeholders that they believe it's a basic human right. Do you?
If I believe that? Well, as I said, as I'm trying to be very clear, I'm hearing that. I also share the view that to make sure that all Canadians have access to decent and affordable housing conditions is an obligation from governments, including the federal governments. Now, to be able to move forward, I need to discuss that with my colleagues from provinces and territories, because that obligation has to be held commonly and has to be responded commonly by all levels of government.
Understood. Okay. Minister, it's good of you to join us on TVO tonight. Merci beaucoup. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Steve, for your interest.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit TVO.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.